new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire, the no-show. Who set you back because they didn't show up on day one, or day two, or ever again. And now your product launch is delayed because you're talking to alien abduction podcasters to track them down. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can help make sure your next hire sticks. In fact, businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Welcome to the Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Ancient wisdom, modern life, and the way. Join the free Modern Taoist community on Patreon at patreon.com/themoderntaoist or visit the website at taoananda.com. And now, the Modern Taoist.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Taoist. My name is Kit Man. Thank you all, by the way, for the new followings on Spotify. So, when they told me all you have to do is ask, this is your fault, Kit. You're not asking enough. All right. If you are on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, please follow us wherever you may be so that you know it's coming, but it also helps the algorithm so more people can discover the show and possibly get some help or some guidance. Speaking of guidance, private guidance is available for you on the website at taoananda.org. That's DAOANANDA.org or .com. We've got a few openings available if you would like to take part in that. It's right there. Also, join us for free over on the Patreon page. There's a little community building over there. It's patreon.com/themoderntaoist. Lots of great questions this week. One of them we're going to answer at the end of the episode today about luck. And I thought that was a great question. A little out of the box. I like the out of the box questions that challenge me. You know what I mean? And lots of new comments and reviews, and you guys just been just so awesome. I appreciate it as always. Let me just start the episode this way. When was the last time you ever felt motivated to brush your teeth? You don't wait to feel motivated to brush your teeth. You don't sit on the edge of the bed wondering, are the conditions right? How is my energy? Is today the day I'm inspired to get up and make dental hygiene happen? None of that happens. You just simply brush your teeth. The same thing happens when you make coffee or when you start your commute. The ordinary machinery of the day runs without consulting this weird file that we sometimes have in our head called motivation. However, when somebody has a book to write or a business to start or a conversation to have or a Taoist practice to build or a life to change in some direction, suddenly motivation becomes a prerequisite. Suddenly, the thing that cannot happen until I'm properly motivated, until the stars align, until Monday. That's my favorite. I'll start on Monday, the beginning of the week. New beginnings. I'll start in the new year. I'll start when the moment presents itself. And then Monday arrives, nothing happens, nothing changes. The new year shows up, you're still the same. The right moment never quite feels right enough, and the thing that you need to do to change your life for the better just sits there undone, accumulating the weight of something that keeps getting deferred. Not because it's a bad idea, but because you filed it in that filing cabinet called motivation. And it is now in a category that requires conditions to appear before you will do the thing that needs to be done. And those conditions, by the way, are not real. Motivation is not a thing. I hate to tell you this. It is something you're making up. It's not a magical state of being that precedes action. It's almost always the consequence of action. It almost always shows up after you start, not before. And you may be thinking to yourself, Kit, what are you talking about? The person that waits for it to arrive before beginning has it backwards. You've got the causality going the wrong direction. You're waiting for the effect to precede the cause. And that's not how it works. Believe it or not, motivation is not a thing. So I want to give you an episode about that inversion, about what the Taoist tradition understands about action and effort, and about why the most useful thing a person can do with motivation is to forget about it. The belief that motivation precedes action is so widespread that I guarantee half of you are calling me nuts right now. You're thinking to yourself, how can I possibly not be motivated until after I start? It is so widespread, it functions as common sense. You feel motivated, therefore you act. The feeling is the cause. The action is the effect. When the feeling is absent, the action cannot reasonably be expected to take place. This is the logic that most people operate on, and it produces a behavior that follows the waiting, the deferral, the search for the right conditions before starting something can begin. And I'm telling you, I'm here to tell you today, that is backwards. Action precedes motivation far more often than motivation precedes action. The writer who sits down without wanting to and finds that after 20 minutes they are genuinely engaged with their work, that is how the motivation arrived after the sitting down. The runner who puts on their shoes but does not want to go run, but returns feeling better than they have all week. That feeling followed the going, not the other way around. You didn't feel better before you left. You felt better after the action. There's a call someone needs to make, and they've been avoiding it. But they just go, all right, I'll just do it. And then once it's over, it was not as hard as they made it out to be. That is because the action came first. These experiences are not the exception. I'm here to tell you this is how it works. The engagement, the energy, the sense of momentum that people are waiting to feel before they start are almost always generated by simply starting. They do not exist in advance of starting. They cannot be accessed from the position of having not yet begun. The only way to have them is to already be inside of the doing. This isn't a small reframing either. It changes what is actually available to a person in any given moment. If motivation is the prerequisite, then the person who does not feel motivated or who does not feel the motivation coming is then stuck. Genuinely stuck, waiting for something, are you ready? Outside of their control. Right? We don't worry about things we cannot control, and motivation is something we cannot control. Therefore, we should not be focusing on it. If action is the prerequisite and the motivation is what action produces, then the person who does not feel motivated is simply someone who has yet to start. And that is a different situation entirely. Right? If you're stuck in the loop of waiting for motivation, I'll start when I'm motivated. That is a loop that is never going to end. And people will say, well, no, that's not true because I knew I needed to work out. I just wasn't motivated until I started reading about this whole new workout plan. Well, that's the action. You already started. The moment you started reading about the plan, that wasn't because of motivation. That's the action. Then you became motivated after you read about the plan, right? Reading the plan was the action. That was the part. Now you're motivated. Now you're in it. The undone thing that you're waiting to do doesn't just sit there. It starts speaking to you. Every time the list is opened and the thing is skipped again, something registers about the gap between the person who intends to do something and the person who acts and does something. About whether the intention can be trusted, about what kind of person this actually is, when the test is whether they follow through on things that matter to them. So waiting to do something, to be motivated to do something, is not just costing time, it's building a case against the thing. And the more days that case gets added to, the more persuasive it becomes. And the harder it gets to start. And this is where Taoism parts ways with most of what gets said about productivity and self-improvement. The self-improvement conversation is almost always about generating the right internal state before acting. Read any of this other stuff, not the Taoist stuff, okay, but all the other stuff, the self-improvement gurus and these people that are trying to take money out of your wallet, and they almost always will tell you about getting your head right first. That the internal state needs to be fixed before you act. I do not accept that. Taoism does not accept that. Taoism does not accept that premise at all. It is interested simply in the action. And the internal state will then follow or it won't. But either way, it doesn't matter because the action is what matters. The action is what is available to you right now. Not next week, not after the routine has been established, not once the conditions have been arranged, but right stinking now. If you have something that needs to be done, start doing it. Stop making excuses. Stop waiting for the motivation to arrive and simply do it. It sounds so simple when somebody says it to you, doesn't it? Well, you need to start a new diet? Well, then start it. What do you see what I'm saying? See how silly it sounds when somebody says it to you? There's a great parable in Taoism about a calligrapher, a Chinese calligrapher who was brilliant, a master. And someone said to him, he said, I can't do this thing right now. I have to go practice my calligraphy. And they said, you practice? You're a master. He said he's practiced every day for 30 years. And they said, well, surely there are days where you don't feel like practicing. Take a day off. And the calligrapher looked at him, really puzzled. And he said, the brush doesn't ask how I feel. The paper doesn't ask how I feel. I sit down and practice because that is what is required of someone who wants to do things. This is not discipline in the way we talk about white-knuckle discipline. He's describing the disappearance of the question. He just removes, there is no motivation. It is simply the act. At some point in those 30 years of becoming a master, the question of whether he felt like practicing simply stopped coming up. Not because the feeling was always perfect or the situation was always exactly how he wanted it to be, but because the question is irrelevant. The practice is the thing. And the practice and the person become the same thing. And you don't ask yourself whether you feel like being yourself. When you are practicing Taoism, this is a fundamental step along the way. When you realize that your actions and you are exactly the same thing. This is the Taoist version, or what we call sustained action. Not the forcing of effort against resistance, and not the waiting for conditions to cooperate. Simply the doing. The alignment of the doing with what your life requires. Until the doing and the requiring are no longer two different things, and the question of motivation does not arise because the question has nowhere to attach. Chapter 63 of the Tao Te Ching lays it out. Do the difficult things while they are easy, and do the great things while they are small. Not after the conditions have improved, not when the timing is better, while they are still small enough to begin, without requiring momentum. The thing avoided for a week is harder to start than the thing avoided for an hour. A project deferred for a year has an accumulated weight that the same project did not carry the first day you realized it needed to be done. The waiting does not improve the conditions. The waiting makes them worse. The starting now is the only thing that helps. We can talk about water if you want. Water doesn't wait to feel like moving, it just moves because that is its nature. It does not assess the difficulty of the flow, it simply flows. It doesn't wait to be motivated, it just goes. You don't wait to be motivated to brush your teeth. You just do it. The Taoist concept of Wu Wei we translate as effortless action, right? A lot of people, we've talked about this before, a lot of people misread that as passivity, whichever one you want to use, as the instruction is to do less, right? It never says anything there about waiting. It's not that. Wu Wei is the description of action so aligned with what the moment requires that it does not produce resistance. The calligrapher's brush moves through the stroke without forcing. That is Wu Wei. The water moves through the landscape without fighting the terrain. That's Wu Wei. Neither of those are passive. They are both fully engaged. The calligrapher understood not as a philosophy, but as a lived experience. He doesn't wait for things to feel right to practice his calligraphy because he is a calligrapher. You see, the action and the person became the same thing. And we can put that in our version, in our modern sense, take it out of a vocation sense. There's a version of the motivation problem that is so recognizable, it's become a joke, right? Except it's not a joke for the people that are inside of it. It is what I talked about earlier. If a Taoist can have pet peeves, this one is mine. Other than people that chew with their mouth open. Okay, so this one is mine. It's people that wait for Monday. People that, I'll get to that on Monday. We'll start fresh, first of the month. Today's the 23rd. I'll start on the 1st. I'll start at the end of this busy stretch. Right? Monday's not a different day. It's the same day with a different name. If you can't start on a Thursday, I got news for you. You're not starting on Monday. Starting is not a function of the day. It is a function of the relationship with the beginning. And if you've ever been one of these people that says, I'll start on Monday, and I've been it, look, I've done it. I'm not above it. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean I haven't engaged in it every now and then. That's probably why I don't like it. Right? But let me break this down for you. Let's say you have done that before, right? You've done this. I'll start on Monday. And then let's say you did this on a Thursday. I need to get started on this new. I'm going to start on my juice fast, and I'm going to start it on Monday. So Thursday, you're all psyched. There's your motivation right there. You're all psyched up, and I'm going to start this juice fast on Monday. And then Friday shows up, and what do? You go out to eat at like Applebee's or something, and you stuff it. You're stuffing all this stuff in you because I'm going to be on a juice fast on Monday. And then Saturday arrives, and you feel cruddy because you stuffed yourself yesterday. And what do you do today? Well, I better eat all that cheesecake that's in the fridge because Monday's coming. And then Sunday shows up, and what happens? You start to dread Monday. And you're thinking about, I don't want to do this tomorrow. Well, I promised myself, though, so I'm going to do it. And Monday shows up and you do it, maybe reluctantly, maybe you don't, probably not. You didn't wait for the conditions to get right. You did it because you told yourself you would. And that's why it probably didn't stick. Monday's not a different day. It's the same day with a different name. Calendars were invented by men. Nature doesn't operate on calendars. All that changes between Monday and Thursday is a made-up calendar. Nothing else changed. The waiting for Monday is the search for permission that you're never going to give yourself. It's a search for a condition that you believe will exist in the future. And we don't operate in the future. There is no day on which the starting feels the way the anticipation of starting imagines it will feel. There is no arrival of readiness that precedes the beginning. There is only starting. That's it. That's literally all that exists. You either start or you don't. Start and delay, those are the only two things in existence. You either do it or you don't. The thing deferred to Monday is also being given a significance it probably doesn't deserve. A clean start, a proper beginning, the right conditions. All of this is framing something in the future to be far bigger than it actually will be when it arrives. The project given a ceremonial Monday start has, by the time Monday arrives, become something that requires a state of readiness proportionate to its accumulated importance. That state does not exist. It doesn't. And the weight of deferring it has added to the thing, so it makes it feel even harder when you do start. Every deferral to Monday is not neutral. It's an undone thing that's sitting in the background of a life waiting to continue. Because the only thing that matters is the starting. Most of us recognize this pattern clearly. A person who is genuinely good at their work once inside it, who produces things that they are proud of once they are in motion, and who nevertheless finds the getting into motion the hardest thing in their life. They're not lacking capability. They're not lacking desire. They're in a daily argument with starting. The argument about whether the conditions are right. The conditions will never be perfect. The work does not care about the conditions. The work cares about whether you started. The person who shows up in imperfect conditions and does imperfect work is building something. The person who waits for the conditions to improve is still waiting. We used to have a thing when I've owned a couple of gyms, and we used to have a saying in the gym world. You can spend the next 30 days not doing it, or you can spend the next 30 days doing it. And at that 30 days from now, you still have to spend those days. So you're going to look back and go, wow, those 30 days went by and I did nothing. You still have to spend those 30 days doing something. The antidote of the doing the thing is the doing the thing. Not because today is special, not because the conditions are right, not because motivation showed up, but because today is the day that exists, and that is the only thing that exists, and the thing can be done today because today is the only day you can do it. Do you see what I'm saying? Tomorrow doesn't exist. Waiting for Monday is waiting for something that is unpredictable. The reason Monday feels like a better day to start is that it feels like a clean slate because we've decided that Monday is a beginning of something. That is the only reason it feels like that. But a beginning can be made on any day, at any time, in any condition. It doesn't require us to check a calendar. It does not require a clear desk or an uninterrupted block of time. It requires the decision to begin. The decision and then the action, not the decision and then waiting for the feeling to be perfect before you can do the action. The calligrapher did not decide every morning whether to practice. He simply got up and practiced. You don't decide every night or every morning or both to brush your teeth. You simply go into the bathroom and brush your teeth. The decision has been made once, and from that point on, it was followed. This is the shift the Taoist tradition wants you to understand. Not a technique for generating motivation, not a system for managing resistance, but realizing the practice happens because it is what is required. The question of whether today is the right day has already been answered. Of course it is the right day. Of course it is. For most people, this relationship with the work exists in some areas and not in others. The job gets done because the job gets done. The question of motivation does not arise in the same way because the external structure has removed it. The gym might be the same or it might not. The creative work, the art project, the personal project, the practice that's holding you accountable, these tend to remain in the domain of daily negotiation. So what do? The practice is moving more things out of the daily negotiation and moving them into the settled, I'm just simply doing it category. Starting with the smallest available thing, not the most important thing. Remember what the Tao Te Ching says. Do the small things while they're small. Do the big things when they are small. Start with the smallest available thing. The thing that has been sitting at the edge of the list the longest without being touched. Do it today without waiting for a motivation, without waiting for a pretend clean slate on a day that we've simply named Monday. Notice what that produces. Not during, because that's going to feel like friction, but after, when the thing is done and is no longer sitting on the list or in the background. Notice how you feel. The person who starts without waiting discovers something that the person still waiting never discovers. And that is that the work is almost always more available and almost always easier than what was anticipated. The blank page with one sentence on it is no longer a blank page. Right? The only way to discover this is by typing a sentence on it. And the only way to do that is by typing the first letter. See what I'm saying? Build your let me start over. What changes as this default gets built is not the experience of starting, because that will continue to feel like starting. What changes is the relationship with that feeling. It stops being a signal that you're waiting for something. It stops being evidence that today is not the right day. It becomes recognizable as simply what it is. I'm starting this right now because right now is when it needs to start. And then do that the next day and the next day. You're not building a system. You're building a new default. Like brushing your teeth. Right? You do it the same every day. So it has become your default. The calligrapher built that default over 30 years. You and I can build a version of that in areas that matter to us considerably faster than 30 years because we're not starting from zero. We're starting from a life that already contains things done without motivation. We just have to recognize, what are we doing without motivation? And what are we doing because it is our default? It has become us. And then we put these things that we have on this list into a whole new file. We take that motivation file that we have in our head and we throw it away. Because we are no longer going to sit and wait to be motivated to do the things we need to do. We are simply going to do them. It's a very Yoda thing, right? There is no try, there is only do or not do. Same with motivation. There is no waiting for motivation because motivation is not actually a thing. Right? We live a life that is full and moving forward, minute by minute, moment by moment, second by second, and the only thing we can control is what we do. We cannot control when motivation will arrive. We cannot control whether Monday will arrive at all. A person waiting and a person doing are two completely different ends of the spectrum. One is living, one is stuck. Let's move on to our listener question. Comes to us from Tana in Austin. My oldest son lives in Austin. Kit, what does Taoism say about luck? Does luck exist, or is it simply a man-made concept? That's a great question. I like these outside-of-the-box questions. Taoism will tell you, I'll give you an answer to this that is, I think, more interesting than a simple yes or no. I think I've told this story before. It's one of the more famous Taoist stories, but I'll tell you again because I like this story and a lot of people like this story. It's about a farmer whose horse runs away, and his neighbors come over and they feel real bad for him. Man, what bad luck. I can't believe your freaking horse left. And he says, yeah, maybe it was bad luck. Maybe. And the next week, the horse turns up and he's brought 3 wild horses with him. Holy cow, his neighbors say, what wonderful luck. You had no horses, now you have 4 horses. And the farmer says, yeah, maybe. Maybe it's lucky. I don't know. Maybe. And then his son goes out and tries to break one of the wild horses and gets thrown and gets his leg broken. And his neighbors are like, oh, that's horrible luck. I can't believe your son got his leg broken. And the farmer goes, I don't know, maybe. And then the army comes through and they're like conscripting men to take him off and draft him into the war. Well, the son can't go to war with his broken leg. He gets passed over. And his neighbors are like, holy cow, what great luck. Farmer says, yeah, maybe. The farmer's maybe is not indifference, it's precision. Because the label of lucky or unlucky is always being applied before the story is finished. The horse running away looks like misfortune, but brings back 3 horses. The broken leg looks like misfortune until it keeps his kid out of the war. Every assessment made in the middle of an event is provisional, because the full consequence of the event is not visible until we get to the end. So we don't know if something's lucky or unlucky. We just don't know. Taoism does not say luck is imaginary. It says that the label is almost always premature, and that the energy spent sorting events into lucky or unlucky is energy that could go towards paying attention to what the events are actually offering. The person who meets what arrives without prior judgment of this is good or bad tends to find that what people call good luck finds them more often. And it's not a mystical thing. It's not a manifestation thing. It's not because the universe is rewarding their attitude. It's because they're present enough to see the opening when it appears. And they are available enough to walk through it without waiting. So the better question, Tana, I think, is when something unexpected happens, not whether it was lucky or not, but what is this offering that I would miss if I were too busy trying to decide if this is good or bad? What am I completely losing out on because I'm applying to a label to something when I simply don't know? And this isn't to mention, like I could go down a whole other road about luck versus bad luck when you put 2 people in a room and the same thing happens to both of them. But one person's luck takes away from the other person, so the other person has bad luck with the exact same event. You see what I'm saying? I could go down that road, but that'd be like another 20-minute conversation here, and we just don't have that kind of time. But here's your Taoist assignment for this week. Identify one thing that you've been deferring. I don't know what it is. It could be a weekend trip you need to take, or joining the gym, or having a conversation with a friend that maybe is going to be awkward. Something you've been putting off. Something you're always saying, I'll do it on Monday or next month, or when things settle down for me. Oh, come on now. One thing that's been on the list long enough that you've stopped believing you're actually going to do it. I'm going to pause for 5 seconds and let all of you form that thing in your head, because every single one of you has it. What is it? As soon as this podcast is over, do it. As soon as you get home, do it. Not some of it. The first real step of it. Do it today, before the thought passes and before the deferral reasserts itself. Not Monday, not Thursday, today. Do it today. And then notice what the doing of it produces. Notice whether the weight of it changes when it is no longer something that is undone. Notice whether doing the first step makes the second step easier. That's your whole assignment. One step today, without waiting for Monday, unless you're listening to this on a Monday, in which case, congratulations, you've reached the day of starting. Do it. Do it today. Motivation is not a magical condition that arrives and makes action possible. Motivation is what action produces. The waiting for it has the causality backwards, and the backwards causality costs you. It costs you days and weeks and years of things that mattered being deferred to a moment when a calendar says it's okay. And deferred to a moment that calendar is never going to deliver. The calligrapher sat down, the brush met paper. He did not wait to feel ready. He was ready the moment he sat down. And the sitting down was the action. 30 years of that produced something that people looking at it from the outside called mastery and talent and gifts. And from the inside, it simply was him. It was the daily decision not to wait. Today is not Monday. It is also not Monday. Because Monday is simply a day with another name. Today is the day that exists, and today is the day that only today you can control to start. The thing can be done today. If this one found you at the right time, pass it on. Send it to whoever or whatever came up today, including what you did when you put the episode down. Let me know. Those are always the conversations worth having. Send your questions in. I'd be happy to answer them. We're going to have another Ask Me Anything episode coming up at some point. I know I've been promising that, and we will do that. I've got piles of great questions, but I just keep getting other ideas. So until next time, join us over on the Patreon page at patreon.com/TheModernTaoist. Or if you're interested in some private guidance, you can get that on the website at daoananda.org. That's DAOANANDA.org or .com. And until next time, I will see you later on The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Join the free Patreon community at patreon.com/TheModernTaoist and subscribe to the podcast for new episodes every Tuesday and weekend Taoism check-ins every Friday. Visit the website at daoananda.com and don't forget to like and follow us on whatever platform you find us.